Just picked up this 2014 Ram 1500. It has a problem with it. We have the code P1416, and we got a misfire in cylinder number 6. This has to do with the MDS solenoid, and we'll have to check some things and test some things out to figure out what's causing it. But currently, right now, it runs, but there's a miss on cylinder 6. There's a misfire. So I'm gonna start taking the intake manifold off, and we're gonna take a look at the reactivation solenoid, and then we'll go from there. Alright, so what I'm gonna do is I wanna get to the MDS solenoids that are underneath the intake manifold. So we're gonna remove this intake manifold and see what it looks like under there. Alright, I got some of those hoses connected. Now I'm gonna unplug all the fuel injectors here, and then I'm gonna disconnect the fuel hose. Okay, I got all the fuel injectors unplugged. Now I'm gonna undo all the 8mm bolts holding the intake in and unplug the remaining connectors here. We have to undo this bolt as well, right there. I removed the bolts for the intake manifold now, and now I'm going to lift this intake manifold up and out of place. I wanted to check the operation of the MDS solenoid to see if it would click or not. So I went into the active test portion and I picked cylinder 6 deactivation solenoid, and I turned it on and off, and I had my finger on top of the solenoid to see if I could feel it click. It did not click. So what I did was unplug the connector on that solenoid, and I plugged it into a similar solenoid, and then I turned it on and off again. And when I turned it on and off when it was connected to the other solenoid, what happened is it clicked the solenoid. What I'm going to do now is remove the solenoid and take a look and see what's wrong with it. Alright, so this is the one that's not working. I tested this circuit on this one, and this one was clicking, so I know the circuit's okay. I'm going to take this out and we're going to take a look at it. It's likely going to need to be replaced. Alright, now these are really hard to get out, so I'm going to spray it around the edges, scrape it up a little bit, and then I'm going to see if I can start wiggling it at all. I was able to get a slight wiggle in it now, so now I'm just going to keep wiggling it back and forth until I can pull it up and out. You don't want to put too much pressure on it because I'm trying not to break it. Alright, I was trying to not pop the top off, but it happens to the best of us. And now I'm gonna screw a screw into it now so we can get some leverage and pull it out. Alright, now I'm gonna get a pry bar and pry up on that and try to get the rest of it out. That the circuit and the computer and everything is good, the solenoid is bad. So I'm hoping that I can replace the solenoid and then the misfire will go away. That would be awesome. I don't hear any abnormal noises other than a little bit of a squeal from the belt and a little bit of an exhaust manifold tick when it's cold. But other than that, it seems to be running good. Now I'm just waiting for the part. As you can see, I got the solenoid out. I ordered the part, and once we get it in stock here, then we're gonna throw everything together and hopefully this is gonna be running perfectly. That would be too good to be true, right? Today the part came in that I ordered, so I'm gonna put it in. We're gonna put this back together. So as you can see, I got stuff to prevent stuff from falling in the intake holes there. Before installing this, we're gonna look in there and make sure that everything's clean. The new part is a dorming one that's made of metal. It's supposed to be a better part and not fail like the other ones. So we'll see how it works. I'm gonna lube these O-rings up before putting it in with some oil, and then once they're oiled up, we'll be able to slide it back into place and put the bolt in. This is what the old one looked like. I was gentle pulling the top part, but of course it just came right off anyway. So I ended up having to screw that screw into it. And then I used the nail remover part of a hammer to pull it out. Alright, so I checked in the hole, there's no debris down there. And I also cleaned up where the O-rings sit. I oiled up the O-rings on this. So once the O-rings are lubricated, we can go ahead and slide it into place. Okay, as you can see, I got the new one in place there. It was a little bit difficult to get it seated all the way. I had to take it out and sand off the top lip around the bore there. But after I did that and cleaned it up and oiled it up again, I was able to slide it down in place. I'm gonna start cleaning up the surface where the intake manifold bolts on. And once that's all cleaned up, we'll start getting everything back together. All right, I got everything plugged back in now, and I got the surface where the intake manifold bolts on cleaned up. You wanna make sure you have a good gasket, so if yours is old and broken, you wanna replace it. Mine is all right, so I'm just gonna clean up the surfaces on each end and sit it in place, and then I'll start bolting the intake manifold back in and we'll start getting things plugged back in. Okay, I have the intake manifold sitting in place. Now I'm gonna put all the 8mm bolts back in, tighten them down, and I'm gonna start plugging things in, plugging the hoses in and the connector. Okay, I got all the bolts tightened in and I got these plugged in. I'm gonna plug in the injectors on this side. I also taped up a few of these ports because I was cleaning them, didn't want water to get in. So I'm just gonna finish connecting the remaining things here and then we'll start it up and test it out. Let's see if this thing works now. Okay, so I replaced the MDS solenoid in cylinder number 6. Right now I'm in the active test section, so I can turn the solenoid on and off to see if I can control it. I'm going to turn it on. And it's active, and it's reading that it's active, so I'm going to turn it back off. And it's going to take a couple seconds, and it should go back to inactive. Alright, so the solenoid's working now, but it's still misfiring on cylinder 6. So I'm going to have to tear the engine down and then we'll go from there. So as you can tell, it doesn't have an obvious loud knock or tick. It sounds normal. It just sounds like it has a dead misfire. So I've already determined that the solenoid that controls the cylinder deactivation on cylinder 6 was bad, and I replaced it. Now I'm able to actuate that solenoid, but it still has a misfire on cylinder 6. So what I'm going to do right now is we're going to take off the valve cover on the passenger side. I'm going to crank it over and look at the rocker arms, and we're going to look at how far they move. And if it appears that there's an issue with one of the lifters, then I'm going to be tearing the engine down further until we get to the source of the issue. What I'm going to do is pull the fuse for the fuel pump F70, and I'm going to do it while it's running, and then I'll let it run until it stalls out. I'm going to start it up now, and then I'll go ahead and pull that F70 fuse. Alright, I'm going to unplug this, and we're going to get this in the air box out of here. Alright, we can take this and lift it out now. Alright, you can take the valve cover off while leaving the coil packs in, but it's just easier to take the coil packs out first. So I'm going to undo all the 10 millimeters holding the coil packs in, and then I'm going to remove the coil packs. Then we'll start working on the 8 millimeters on the valve cover. Alright, it was a little bit more difficult to get to the back one here, but you can pull this hose off the clip there, and you can move it around to get it out of your way. So now that these are off, I'm going to pull these out. We want to be careful not to damage these or bend these rubber parts. Alright, if needed, you can move this out of the way a little bit. I'm going to undo all these 8 millimeter bolts all the way around the valve cover, and then we'll be able to lift it off to take a look. Alright, all the valve cover bolts are loose on this side now, so we should be able to lift up away. We're just going to have to undo this plug here first. Connector there. Okay, I have the valve cover off here, as you can see. So this is what we're going to be paying attention to, cylinder 6. So we're going to watch these two, and we're going to compare the movement of this to the other ones. So I'm going to sit this somewhere while I crank it. You want to make sure that you got your wires up out of the case. So surprisingly, on the crank test, it appears that the valves are opening on cylinder 6. I got the solenoid actuating, so I decided I need to check the spark plugs to see what's going on. And the first spark plug I went to take off, it was in there loose. I see, as you can see, the person that was trying to fix this put new spark plugs in it, and it appears that they didn't tighten them down. You can see the crush washer's not even really crushed. But anyway, I sprayed these off, cleaned off all the substances on them, and I sprayed them off with brake clean, and now I'm going to reinstall them to the proper torque. And I'm definitely going to check the others to make sure they're good too. And I would be very happy if this was the problem. And the previous owner did put new spark plugs in it, but whoever installed them loose. Cylinder 6 had a loose spark plug in it, so I decided to check them all for tightness, and there was actually a few others that had some turns in them left. So I'm hoping that's what the issue is. When I crank it over, it sounds like a healthy engine. I don't hear any loss of compression. So I'm gonna clean up the surfaces here and put it back together and hope that fixed the misfire. All right, I got this valve cover back in place, and now I'm gonna put the coil packs on and plug them in and put the intake back on and figure out if this misfire's gone. Okay, I have all the coil packs plugged back in. Now I'm gonna get this intake in here. Remember, first thing you wanna do is plug that connector in the back. Then we'll get that bolted down and start connecting everything. All right, I got the intake back in place and everything plugged in. I'm gonna put the fuse for the fuel pump back in. All right, everything's back together now, so it's the moment of truth now. I'm gonna start it up and we'll see what happens. Okay, I'm gonna crank this first in clear flood mode so I can hear if the engine sounds healthy. And then if it does, we'll go and try to start it. Oh, it sounds like such a healthy crank. The status is finally inactive, and we're getting a pulse width for cylinder 6. It doesn't seem like it's misfiring either. Oh, it sounds good. Let's put it into a gear to see if it... Oh, it goes into reverse nicely. And drive, it goes into drive nicely too. I'm going for a test drive. I'm just gonna fill that in. As you can hear, it's running nicely. Has a little bit of a manifold tick that I'm gonna have to fix, but okay, now it's time to take it for a test drive and see if it's really fixed. Alright guys, I'm test driving this for the first time since fixing the misfire. So what it ended up being was the solenoid was bad, but I feel like somebody else was trying to chase other issues too. And when the spark plugs were replaced, they left them loose in cylinder 6. Can you believe that? Oh, it's working good right now, and as you can see, there's no engine lights. I just checked the tire pressure. The pressures are good, so it might be the spare that's getting low. Everything is awesome so far. Got some pickup. I got it for a steal because they thought something was broken on it. It just ended up being a negligent tech because he didn't even tighten the spark plugs. Alright, as you can see, we're getting back and everything's good. It's running perfect. Now, if any one of you guys has this code, I hope it's a simple fix like this. Hopefully it's not the camshaft and lifters. Maybe you'll be lucky like I am.